Welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at the Battle of Leonidion in Greece. We're going to be doing quite a few of these Greek Civil War scenarios. Bought a book a while back. Let me just get it. The Greek Civil War, 1944 to 1949 by Edgar O'Ballance. And it was quite expensive actually. Mainly because it's sort of old. It's not that old. 1966, ex-library book. Cover not in the best. Well, the stitching on the spine. It's not the book. It's just the cover. It's sort of a bit loose. It is a first edition, but anyway, it was a bit expensive. But I bought it and I finally read it. And I wouldn't say it's a great book, mainly because it has about 3 maps in it. They're all of Greece. There's one close-up map. There's 4 maps, I think. There might even be an index of maps. Have a quick look. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 maps. Democratic Army supply routes 132. Yeah. Okay, so that's what that was, because they're not even labelled. They're not good maps, essentially. Yeah, they're not good maps. But that's beside the point. I mean, it's a good book. It's reasonably good. I think reading it through gave me a pretty good idea of what happened in the war, and it's good enough. And I think because it's 1966, it's written in a sort of format that I do like. In that it's quite sort of rudimentary in its sort of approach, really sort of explaining, what was what without too much sort of added, I don't know, overtones, but it's not given me sort of a massive amount to work on in the sense of battles. So this battle here is the Battle of Leonidion. Now I chose this one just completely randomly, just by looking at not so much a random page. I sort of knew what I was looking for, but I did take a random page. It's on page 189, and the entire reference to this battle is on January the 23rd. Lock commando units drove insurgent fighters from the town of Leonidion, killing over 120 and taking over 60 prisoners and deserters. And that's it. So that's all we have to work from, and that's typical. There's lots of other ones like that, and the thing is, the reason I'm sort of happy to work with that is because I do historic work in other fields, and history is an interesting field. But one of the key things to history is the sources. All history is based on sources, and with a lot of sources, I think I've covered this elsewhere before, but with a lot of sources, there's plenty of it. I know I've talked about this before, but on YouTube. In my videos here, but for things like the Vietnam War, there's just plenty of everything. But for something like this, and this is a good case example, there's not a lot more to it. And I did look on Wikipedia for Leonidion, and there is an entry actually on there for this battle, and it said. On the 23rd of January 1949, there was a major battle, and that's it. And so, when you're dealing with this sort of thing, you say, well, where are the sort of sources? Now, the good thing about this book, and it's like a lot of books, or a lot of these good books, quite interesting. He's got a book on the Indochina War, 45 to 54. I might even buy that. But I'm not sure what I'm looking. Oh yeah, So he's got a bibliography there. Well, this is acknowledgements, actually. And what's that? Yeah. So basically, I mean, for example, there are other books here. Anti-guerrilla war in Greece, 46 to 49. So that's probably going to cover a lot of the wars. So that might be a good book. I can't say because I haven't got it. I mean, there's lots of other ones here, but Battle of Greece, Battle of Greece 40 to 41. So that's not what I want. Case study in guerrilla war, Greece during World War II. So a lot of this is focused on World War II, I think. That other one actually looks quite good. Anti-guerrilla war in Greece, 46 to 49. Documents regarding the situation in Greece, Foreign Office for London. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the point is there's a bibliography, and Greek entanglement, Greek miracle, Greek resistance army, Greek sedition, Greek tragedy, Greek trilogy, Greek white book, guerrilla and counter-guerrilla warfare in Greece, 41 to 45. That's not what I want. Guerrilla war in Greece, 46 to 49. That's the same one we had referred to before, isn't it? Why is it in there twice? Oh, so Lieutenant Colonel E. Zakaraki wrote Anti-Guerrilla War in Greece, 46 to 49, but he also wrote a book cunningly titled Guerrilla War in Greece, 46 to 49. Lieutenant Colonel E.R. Oh, that's Wainhouse. Okay, different guy. Etc., etc. I Lived with Greek Guerrillas by E.B. Turton. It'd be interesting to just have all these books if I could just suddenly have them. Anyway, so that's sort of a bit about the book. And I've been trying to sort of get into the Greek Civil War for a while, and the Wikipedia is just not good enough, and there's nothing else sort of on it. It's pretty sort of difficult to find anything. I think I've even sort of tried to look in sort of old newspapers, because I've got a subscription through to the Times newspaper, so I can look back in that. But I think the thing is, because it's Second World War, the whole thing was sort of overshadowed, although I'll probably find something for the 46 to 49 period, even the 45 to 49 period maybe. So there's those sorts of things as well, but it's all about collecting the sources and then sort of trying to put them together, and that's what does appeal to me. And some, the Vietnam War heavily documented, Iraq War not so well, but somewhat. There's plenty of battles detailed, but the scale was different. But this is just sort of there's not a lot to it, and because it's so sort of old. 46, 49. I mean, I have actually considered doing some of the bits with the Germans in it, mainly because the Germans could be non-players, because basically in the early part of the sort of 41 to 45, well, 41 to 44, the Germans are so strong that the guerrillas don't really try attacking them. They spend a lot of their time attacking each other. And there's multiple guerrilla groups, and they basically go around sort of the mountain areas of Greece, vying for territory between each other. They don't really attack the Germans, because every time they attack the Germans sort of kill 200 Greek civilians, and they're pretty ruthless on sort of reprisals of that nature. And then when the Germans do leave, they take their time, they leave, and then they stop in Greece. The British sort of bring in their invasion force. It's not so much an invasion force; they're just armed with rifles and things to take up the vacuum as the Germans leave. But when they get to Athens, the Germans really aren't in a rush, and the Allies really can't push them. They're just too strong. But they are, and when they do leave, their vanguard sort of outpaces the advance of the Allies. So it's quite interesting. So I could put in a battle where the Germans are non-players, and I could also do another one where that they're actually where they are actually. I'm sorry, I'm fiddling with my battery. I don't think it's on. Let me just go. No, let's make sure my battery's on. Ah, it's recording. Yeah, battery's now on. Yeah, so I was saying, I could do one where the Germans are static and you don't attack them because they're too strong anyway, and another one where the Germans leave. I don't know how I'd do that, but the Germans would have to be the other party and you'd play them, but they would move faster. So that would be tentatively pushing the boundaries back from the 46 period that I've sort of got defined, or the post-Second World War, because some of this is part of the Second World War. So it's got a lot of stuff about what happened, the dynamics, and what's interesting about this whole Greek period is that it's got several distinct phases. For example, there's a phase where whilst the Germans are there, where the guerrillas are attacking each other. And then after the Germans leave, there's a sort of power struggle, and they're basically the guerrillas basically try and take Athens, and they almost do it, but the British intervene and they're beaten back and basically pulverized. They're used to being guerrillas, and it's quite interesting. And when they say guerrillas, we're talking about sort of irregulars in the way I do things. And when they take Athens, they're not very good at it. They're good at coming out of the mountains, attacking a railway station, coming out of the mountains, attacking a convoy and then fleeing back. But they're not. They just weren't very good at what you call set battles, where they were actually trying to take on a heavily defended position against sort of the British army, highly trained sort of professional army. And after the first day, when they didn't win, they started to become a bit disorganized, and they just really didn't have it in them. They were just guerrillas, insurgents, and they basically lost, or they were pushed back. And it's that dynamic between being insurgent or guerrilla and being a standing army. Now, in the second phase, when they basically the Democratic Army is levied, so to speak, or created, they spend a lot of time engaged in guerrilla activity, and it's part of the Mao Zedong thing, I think, from China and Vietnam. We're talking about essentially continual guerrilla warfare in order to sort of wear the enemy down and to win the day. And so they're playing this sort of guerrilla warfare game in Greece, and essentially about 48 they're having some other problems basically with Yugoslavia, and they're sort of facing this situation where the Americans are now involved, supporting Greece, and they're getting stronger and tougher. And so they moved from being a sort of guerrilla force, which they were doing very well, although they still, Edgar Balance says they probably would have still lost. And then they reorganize into several divisions and corps, I believe, to become a standing army. And then they basically try to take towns and villages, and they basically fail completely, abysmally. And when they do take places, they lose them. And now this scenario here is basically one of those situations. So what they've done is these are not irregulars anymore. This is a standing army, so they're not fighting as guerrillas, as insurgents. The IR unit that I have in all the other games. So when I do some more of these earlier ones, there will be IR, irregular units, but they're working as a standing army. So what they've done, they've basically taken they've basically taken a Leonidion, and they did this to quite a few places. And as I said, I'd be going through that book, and just where it says they took this place, and sometimes they held it for 2 days, sometimes for 6 days, sometimes for 14 days because of the bad weather. But they never held anything. Once the Greek army got there, they just beat them out because they weren't a standing army, and they just weren't big enough. They weren't strong enough, and so that's what's happening here. They've taken Leonidion, and basically they use these lock forces. And just before we get into playing the game, I've got the quiz down here. I'll just run through it. Who are the KKE? Kurdish Workers' Party, Greek Communist Party, Republic of Freedom Fighters, People's Patriotic Force. I know this one, so it's basically the Greek Communist Party. So you're picking things up as you go along. I mean, I've read the book, and this is, I don't want to use all the really good questions just in this first one. Try and split them up. What region of Greece is Leonidion in? But it's basically the Peloponnese. Again, I sort of know that one. Who are the Lock? Now, you've got a clue up here because the Leonidion was held by the Democratic Army on 23rd of January 1949. The Greek National Army used Lock commando units to drive them out. Now, it says it was held, but what's not said in Edgar O'Balance's book is how long they held it. They probably only took it a couple of days before. And it's probably not a big place, not really that difficult for them to take. So what the Lock is, so they're commandos, Hellenic Mountain Raiders companies of special forces, Mountain Raider companies, SAS. They did have the motto, "Who dares wins," but it's actually the Hellenic Mountain Raider companies of special forces. When did the Greek government declare the Peloponnese free of insurgents? Now, I didn't want to really use this question, but then I thought, why not? Because we're giving it away there. We're connecting this up. Obviously, if you look back, you sort of think, hang on, okay. So anyway, but you might not know what the Peloponnese is, Peloponnese, but they've got another clue up here because this is obviously got insurgents in it, and it's the 23rd of January 49, so there's probably only one answer. Well, there's that answer, which is wrong. It's 16th. I know that. Well, I know it's not this one because I did that on purpose, 25th of December. I thought that would catch people out. Which country was the main supporter of the Greek National Army? The Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, United States, Albania. It's a bit of a trick question, really, because everything seems to slant towards the Democratic Army. This is obviously the Greek National Army, and it was the United States. So let's see. Yeah, I now set the question, so of course I'm going to get them all right, but I think they're interesting. So anyway, we're just going to give it a quick play. They do one of the key things that is interesting about it, because essentially there's these two main periods. The second period has sort of two sub-periods when they're regulars and when they are standing army. But in both of them, they're basically the Greeks basically lose, except they gain the support of either Britain in the first period and then win, or they gain the support of the Americans in the second period and win. And the Americans did quite a lot, and down here you'll see these are Curtiss the Helldivers, Curtiss SB2C Hellldivers. They get 50 of these, and it's little things like this, having an air force, because they don't have an air force, and they were basically they started to become terrorized by these screaming dive bombers with rockets. And the Americans did a lot for them. They've reorganized their army structure. They organized a lot of their strategic effort. They basically told them to start producing these lock commando units instead of standing units. And they did quite a lot, really. But in both cases, if it wasn't for the Americans in the second case, they probably would have lost as well, because at one point the Democratic Army held like 4/5 of the country. They were doing really well, and they had a lot of support. But Edgar O'Balance in his conclusion talks about a lot of the things that an insurgent army, a guerrilla army, needs. and a lot of it is sort of like a source of weapons, and they were heavily supported by Yugoslavia. Interestingly enough, they didn't have any. They didn't actually have any sort of support from Russia. Russia just didn't want to support them. They thought they were idiots, and it's quite strange because it's quite a long and extended battle, and over like 20,000 people or 200,000 people died, and Russia just didn't do anything. And it's talking about where people get their supplies from, and they were basically crossing the border into Yugoslavia for years, and being fed and rearmed, and medical facilities, their hospitals, training facilities, all sorts. So basically, Yugoslavia was supporting the war. So this is really just representation of what's happened. Now the thing is, because I've read the paragraph out in the book that I got it from, and I don't know, and I don't know anything more about this battle. I don't know whether or not they came from this way, this way, this way, this way. I don't know where they came from. So I've done it like this, but it could be that they came down this mountain pass, but basically they would come out the hills, they come out the mountain, so I presume they come down from here. Let me just hold on a sec. Yeah. Hello. Essentially, I felt like I wanted to get this. This is Leonidion. So there's a picture of it there, and you look at those vast canyon-like things. It gives you an idea of the geography. And that's sort of what that's supposed to reflect. So you can imagine this is probably just a little path up one of those steep hills. Landscape. I haven't read this, but here it is. On the January 21st, 1949, a major battle of the Greek Civil War took place in this town, and that's it. So I just thought that was interesting that it's about it. But the thing is, it is actually real. And so who knows where they came from, and all of that. Now, let's just see how far we can get with these guys. So that's, they might be able to get quite a way. 0.75. I can't think. Okay, so we can get that far that way. If we go like this, go a lot further. Look at that. I did think of this earlier. Okay, so let's just dive bomb on these. Oh, look at that. That's good. They're going to have to split up, aren't they, if they want to survive. Okay, so that's that. I mean, basically, they didn't stand a chance historically. And maybe I could take one of these aircraft out. Okay. Right, they're not going to do anything. See whether we can route this. Might be on the wrong side of the river here. Now these are special forces, so they should get a huge bonus here. Probably be a 7-1. Yep. Let's see what our odds are across this river. An exchange. Oh, 5.3. 3. Well, I think I'm going to move the 3 back into there. I'm going to lose again, but... we've got some artillery. 0.5. Could have probably done that last turn as well. Okay. Okay. Well, we can probably push him back. DE. Let's push him to there so we can move in. Probably knock him out. Yep. Let's push him back to there and move across. Some artillery. Okay, let's go for pushing these guys ever forward, ever back. Oh, eliminated that one. Put him down here. Okay, and the aircraft. Now, it's, I think, a clear walkover, but again, to reiterate, they didn't have any problems pushing the units out. Sometimes they got a bit stuck, but that was about it. They started using these commando units at the advice following the advice of the US military advisors. I think the Greek generals just wanted more units. They just wanted more manpower, and the Americans said, well, no, we're not going to give you more manpower. I mean, all the facilities or the equipment for more manpower. What we're going to do is take your existing manpower and turn them into these commando units, and they were a hell of a lot better. And they noted that they're actually sort of almost playing a guerrilla warfare strategy in their own right by using these. Democratic Army, well, they did fight fairly heavily throughout. Well, one thing about a big stack is it's more to hit. That's nice. So that would have been like the big exchange in the war, in the battle. I don't want to sit in there with another target. Maybe I shouldn't have stacked them up. 2.9. Yep. I mean, 3.6 or 5.3. Definitely don't need two of these. Let's see what we can do with just one. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so that's pretty much that. Pushed him back. Probably overkill, but seeing they've entered the zone of control, I think I have to do it. Eliminated that unit. And that's that. So that's pretty much sort of game over, and I quite like that. I think I'm going to take one of the aircraft out because I think it gives them too much of an edge. And I might put in an extra Democratic Army unit just to give them a little more flavour for what they do. I'm not sure I'm going to put anything south of the river, but it's not really supposed to be a big challenge. I mean, none of these battles were. One of the reasons that they've got, for example, if you look at the order of battle on this, they're just 1-1s. Now I could have given them 3-3s if they were if I wanted to, but the reason they're 1-1s is because they're supposed to be representing a weak army. They were not very good at being a standing army. The term set piece battle keeps coming up, and I've never really fully understand what that means, but I'm sort of beginning to get a better idea. I think basically when they were they were holding a town and that's what they had to do, and they weren't very good at that. So what they'd be good at is raiding this town, coming out of the mountains, raiding it and running away. What they're not very good at is coming down, taking it and then holding it against essentially things like artillery, constant artillery barrages. These are things that just sort of crushed them. The dive bombers, the aircraft, etc., etc. So I do intend to do a lot more at this period. Whether I get the time to is something else, but hopefully I can do a few more. And what I will try to do is cover all the periods. I mean, so far I've got 2. It was interesting because after reading the book, I went back and looked at the Battle of Konitsa, and again, it was when they were using they were trying to basically. This wasn't sort of a guerrilla battle. What they did, they announced a capital. They announced a new government. That's what they wanted to do, so they could fight a political game as well. And then they declared they were going to take this. And I think the idea was that they were hoping to have taken the town before they declared their government, but the logistics got a bit messed up, and so they didn't quite get the town before they declared the government, and they lost it. And it's sad reading in some extent, because they did all these battles. They even did a test, and I'll be doing this one as well. They did a test to take out a small town, and they won. And they took this small town out, and they, based on the understanding of how easy it was, they then decided to take Konista and failed. And again, the reasons they failed is because they're more guerrilla forces, and as soon as they met some resistance, some of the troops, they just sort of, they wouldn't advance. They would run away. There was some bravery and things like that, but they were more, they just weren't up to sort of driving against, a hard object. As soon as they started to get artillery fire coming down, it sort of changed their morale ratings quite a lot. Maybe I shouldn't use the word morale ratings, but they just weren't very good at that sort of stuff. But after reading the book through, and I looked at this, and the only thing I would say about this is probably more units than they really should be. But even so, I think it's still it's within reason. There were a lot of units involved. It was one of the major battles, but you know, this is a 47 battle, and this is a 49. And we can go all the way back to, and I think we'll do one of these with the Germans in it, but the Germans won't be an active player, and so we'll be looking at the guerrillas fighting each other for territory in across Greece. But I really want to sort of get to grips with the Greek Civil War. No promises really, but you know, it covers so much, and there's so many sort of variants in the way things were done. So many sort of comparisons to the way things are being done now. I mean, for example, the Greek National Army, it's not too far off the concept and the term the Libyan National Army, who are fighting a civil war that's been going on for a number of years in Libya. Now, that is a very different battle, but the whole sort of concept and the way that a balance goes into, you know, guerrilla forces and how they work, the more parallels you can see with what's happening today. And I think there's so much in the Greek Civil War that has a comparison and lessons learned, you know, in principle for modern warfare, that it's really sort of exciting me a little to sort of really get my teeth into it for that reason, but also because it just doesn't seem to be covered. You know, no one's done the Battle of Leonidion. You know, it's got one little line in Wikipedia. The Battle of Konitsa is about it. I think it's the only one, and I think if you look at the reference, no, I think I talked about it. I think I got the information for it from the free Google Books copy of Edgar Balance's book. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed that. You know, and perhaps have a think about the Greek Civil War, etc. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.